Okay, if you just talk for me, just say your name.
Michelle Motta with Voices.
That's good level there. Okay. And I'll be over here, and we'll just see where we go, okay? All right.
Okay.
You're not nervous, are you?
Yes, I am.
Oh, I'm sorry. Welcome to Inside Look. I'm Jeff Lyons. My guest today is Michelle Motta with Voices, a nonprofit here in the tri-state that advocates for senior citizens and others in healthcare situations. Is that pretty accurate? Did I get it all in one whack?
You pretty much did.
Okay.
Yes,
And, you know, this is something new for me, a topic to talk about here on Inside Look. I'm kind of curious about a lot of things. So first of all, just in a nutshell, what does Voices do? Who is it aimed at?
Well, Voices is a nonprofit. Then we are a voice for those who live in nursing homes and licensed assisted living homes in Vanderburgh County. We provide the long-term care ombudsman services for them, which an ombudsman basically is a Swedish word for a citizen representative. So when folks have problems or concerns that they can't get resolved, or they just need some information or some advice, then they can contact us, and our services are free, and whatever anyone tells us, it's absolutely confidential unless we have their permission to share it.
How'd you get involved in this line of work? What drew you to it?
Oh, my. Well, I grew up a lot and spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and she had a cafe, and I worked in the cafe before it was probably illegal to work at that young age. But so I spent a lot of time there, and I really got to know a lot of the elders, and that went there frequently, daily, and just really enjoyed their stories and their wisdom, and that just kind of tugged at my heart. And so when I went to college, I got my degree in legal studies, and then I saw an ad in the paper for a person who the Indiana Legal Services was looking for someone who was liked elders and also to do advanced directives, and so that was right up my alley. So.
Yeah. Okay.
And then 25 years later, here I am.
Okay, but you're also kind of under the realm of social services too, right?
Yes,
social work.
Yeah.
And so, where did you have to then come back around and get that, or is that part of the learning process here as you've gone?
When I first went to college, I started out in social work, and then I finished with legal studies.
Right.
So it kind of was just meant to be, I think.
Yeah.
It all just fit together.
Okay, so here and I'm assuming you're serving a pretty broad area, not just Vanderburgh County. Is that correct?
We serve Vanderburgh County, but we serve 23 facilities, Alicia and I do. And Alicia focuses more on the assisted living homes.
And Alicia is your second in command?
Yes. She is a certified long-term care ombudsman also. Okay. And but she just really focuses more on the assisted livings.
So when you go into these facilities, do they know you're coming, or do you surprise them, or since the patient or the person, the resident, reached out to you, I'm assuming this all kind of happens behind the scenes, or how does that work? In other words, if a person living in a facility has a complaint or a concern, or more likely the family has a concern or complaint, they get in touch with you, and then what happens?
Well, we're resident directed, so if the resident has the capacity to talk to us and give us permission to act, then we go to the resident and see what it is that they want us to do. If we're going in for a scheduled care conference at the facility, then the facility would know we're coming. But we don't ever announce when we go in unless we have a meeting or something scheduled.
What's a typical, I'll say, complaint or report that you would get? Like from a family, they call you up and they say, hey, XYZ is happening. What would XYZ be, if you can tell me?
Wow. The whole alphabet, probably.
Well, like not getting fed enough, or, some sort of, something like that, or what?
More recently, it has to do with staff attitudes, that they are not being kind, or the residents not getting the care they need, or the call lights are not getting answered. Food is also a big issue when people are getting things that they have told the facility they don't like on their tray, and they get them, or they're not getting what they said that they wanted. The food is inedible. Just anything from healthcare, and all the way through, things like no activities.
Right. Healthcare seems to be kind of a hard thing to navigate anyway, even if you're of sound mind and body and kind of know what's going on. Of course, you're usually sick or something, and it helps to have an advocate. Typically, it'd be like a family member, if you have a family member to kind of look out for you. But as you advance in age, I'm sure it gets more complicated. So when Voices comes in and receives that complaint, then what's your power? Like, how do you get them to mind then, get the facility or whomever then to shape up?
Well, we don't have a lot of power, but we do know the regulations. The federal and state regulations are what we use to advocate for the residents, because it's easier to go and say the resident is supposed to be able to get up, when they want, instead of getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning when the staff want to get them up.
Right.
So we use the regulations a lot in advocating for the residents.
Why does it happen that way in many places? Is it an understaffing issue or just the quality of training? What do you think it is?
I think it's the quality of training, but I think it's just a big misunderstanding that folks don't understand that the home, that's the resident's home. And so just like you and I have rights in our home, no one can just come in and take us and put our belongings in a trash bag and move us down the street. They're not supposed to do that in a nursing home either.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing, is that staff have a misunderstanding that it's their workplace and what they say goes, as opposed to it's the resident's home and the residents really should be in charge.
That can be a hard balance, so to change. I mean, just walking in from time to time, as you do, somebody has to upstream, has to set the culture the other way, right?
Exactly. It's a change in culture that we work on.
But so many more people are living longer, getting older, and we might be in that category here in just a few years. It's somewhat frightening, to think, well, what are my options going to be?
It can happen just in a second with an automobile accident or a diagnosis or a head injury, or you name it, and it could happen to any of us where we would be in a long-term care home, either temporarily for rehabilitation or for long-term.
Yeah. What have some of your biggest successes been? Like, what are you proud of that you've accomplished? And you've been with Voices for quite some time now.
Yes.
So you must have some things that you're like, wow, we dug in and we did this.
I think the biggest ones are whenever facilities try to, we'll say, evict a resident and they're not doing it properly and they don't have a legal reason to do it. So Alicia and I can represent the residents at administrative hearings and enter evidence and do all that kind of stuff. And then the hearing officer will make a decision. And so almost all the time we do win those. And so it's very rewarding to know that someone's not getting kicked out of their home.
Who decides if you win it or not? If you're the ombudsman, you're in the middle, right? So do you decide who wins or loses in a case? Or
well, the facility's on one side saying we should evict this person for these reasons and we've done what we were supposed to do. And then the ombudsman are on the other side with the resident saying, you didn't follow the regulation here and you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and you don't have a valid reason.
Yeah, but somebody doesn't have like a gavel and say, okay, the case goes to the ombudsman.
Oh yeah, the administrative law judge does.
Okay.
Yeah,
so there is a judge.
They decide.
Well, I missed that detail. Okay, that's very important. So once this happens, then do you find then that there's instant compliance, or do you still have to kind of nudge and go back and make sure that they are living up to the agreement?
They usually live up to the agreement. One situation was where the resident had already been kicked out to another home, and we were able to get that resident back to the one they had gotten kicked out of. So that was an especially great time, I think, for the resident. Yeah.
Yeah. Who typically uses your service? Like, how old are they? Let's say, if you had an average age, or if there is such a thing as like your average user, who would that be?
I think anymore, it's more folks probably our age because they have parents maybe or grandparents in long-term care. And I'm not going to say how old we are, but...
well, we all kind of know. We're of an age anyway.
Anyway, so they have maybe parents or grandparents in the nursing home. And we're at an age where we think there just has to be somebody that can help us with this. And so they go searching, and then they find the ombudsman. So.
We actually, in my family, just for disclosure here, we're going through this, but not in Evansville, in Fort Wayne, Indiana. My mother-in-law is 99. And there was a similar situation where, depending on who was on shift at the place, she received excellent care, or maybe it wasn't quite so good. And so my family, my wife's family, appealed, and I guess through a similar structure in Fort Wayne. I don't know how it's done in Allen County, but and they were able to get more suitable treatment for my mother-in-law. So it does work. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. And in fact, as we're recording this, we were just there for the weekend. We didn't spend the night at the nursing home, but we spent a couple of days there. And it's interesting how they operate. I've been in a lot of those places over the years, talking weather, doing things for activity directors and things like that. And it was very interesting because you could tell the patients who needed attention and cried out for attention tended to get it, but also them were right there by the nurse's station or whatever.
Parking them there.
Right. And so when you go into a facility, on one case, are you kind of looking around at the overall picture and assessing like, oh, well, this is how it goes here all the time?
We do. When we're required to go in quarterly, so we go in and we look at different things and, what do we hear? What do we see? What do we smell? Does the activity calendar look like it has enough activities to meet the needs of the residents? Are meals on time? Do the meals look edible? We talk to some residents and see how things are going to get an idea if there's anything that we need to address, and just to let the residents know that we're there if they need them. We also deliver, when we were going in quarterly, we deliver a newsletter for the residents with information about their rights. And I know at Christmas, a big one is about loss and theft, because there are a lot of things that turn up missing during the holidays.
Gifts come in, right? And
and then
somebody's not really looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that and Mother's Day, that's always a big thing. So we have some information about how to try to prevent loss and theft of items in the nursing home on our website. So we have a lot of information on there if people are interested.
Yeah.
But
it's fraught. I mean, it is always fraught. Whether you're going into long-term care, even just going to the hospital, to have your gizzard taken out or whatever. There's always, you need that advocate, for you when you're unable to make decisions like that.
Yeah, and you were talking about your mother-in-law, and there are long-term care ombudsmen all across the country. It is a federally mandated program. Extremely underfunded, and we're just lucky at Voices that we have our own nonprofit that we can fundraise and be able to provide more services.
How do you raise your funds?
Well, we get some grants and we take donations, and then we do a couple of fundraisers a year. We do one at Halloween out at Washington Square Mall, Walk Through Boo, and then we're starting a new one that's Baking Spirits Bright, November, December-ish, like a cookie exchange. So we're doing that. But, it's just Alicia and I at the office. So, we're the technology folks and everything. So, and the ombudsman. So, we have a great board of directors. We really do, to help us out with the fundraising. But it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, for any nonprofit, but especially
Absolutely.
one that's handling this kind of work. What's your typical caseload? Like, how many people are you dealing with at any given time?
I think that I have about 20 cases open right now.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It is a lot.
And does that mean a daily update, contact, follow-up, or what's an open case?
Where there's been maybe communication made with the administrator or the director of nursing or social services or whoever about something that I'm asking them to change, and then a lot of times, residents may have cell phones or not, and so we have to go back to the resident and find out if it was resolved to their satisfaction. So that usually means another follow-up that we have to actually go to the facility to talk to the resident. And hope that they're there and not at dialysis or playing bingo or something like that.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to interrupt bingo. No. I learned that lesson the hard way in Fort Wayne. So
yes.
Definitely that's sacred. Any other things we should know about Voices and what you do here in the community?
I mean, we've been around since 1980, so we're, one of those best kept secrets, I guess. Alicia and I are very passionate about the elders in long-term care, and again, our services are free and confidential. If anyone would like to know more, they can go to our website. Just really encourage people that if they know someone in long-term care, and they have a problem, they're welcome to call us. But we always recommend that if you're having an issue with the dietary, go to the dietary manager in the kitchen. If you're having an issue with the clothing being lost, go to the person in housekeeping and laundry.
Right.
Go to that person, because going to the aide on the hall, that doesn't usually get a result that you need. So
but try to work through channels, right?
Yes,
like
exactly.
work up the chain of command, and then if all else fails, then bring in the big guns, right. With voices.
Right, and don't always believe what the facility tells you. Trust your instincts on that. So that's another important one. It's a phone call to us just to check and make sure that what they're being told is accurate.
Yeah. Do you ever get like numerous calls from the same place, and they're like, "Oh yeah, here we go again"?
Yes.
Are you allowed
yes.
then to disclose that to the person who calls in? Well, we've had 20 complaints here, or since everything's confidential, I mean, that might be informative to the person calling in. It's like, oh, I don't want to be here. We want to change.
We can't recommend, but we can give information. So we like to give information on what to look for in a nursing home. There's some resources out there. A lot of folks like to use the Medicare.gov 5-star rating. That is not necessarily the best picture of how things are going. But the other thing is we have access to the reports the State Department of Health writes when there's citations. And we can pull that up and we can give that to folks, and we can say, when we were in there, we saw this. That's not a confidential thing. It's us saying what we saw, or any other information. Like we do receive a lot of complaints from there, or we don't receive complaints from there, which doesn't necessarily mean they're perfect, but yeah.
Yeah. Overall, what's your impression of long-term care here in the Evans and Vanderburgh County? Do you think it's pretty good? Do you think it's C? Like, what grade would you give it? Put it that way. We're not naming any names. We're just saying overall.
I would say a C. Over the years, there had been a handful of places that I would be willing to put my mom, dad in there, and that's becoming more difficult. I think it has to do with the staffing and the folks who are working in long-term care. There are some wonderful, wonderful folks that work in long-term care, and then there are other folks there that just want to get a paycheck.
And it's not much of a paycheck either.
No,
these are very low-paying jobs typically.
And there had been a staff to resident ratio. There's no staff to resident ratio for long-term care. The regulations say there must be enough staff to meet the needs of the resident. And that's extremely subjective.
Right.
And so there had been legislation to have a staff to resident ratio, but that recently has gotten changed. So that was like a punch in the gut.
Yeah.
So that's some of the things that we're up against, but we still do whatever we can. I've done in-services for staff, sensitivity training to try to get them to see the actual resident as a person, not just as a job. So we keep fighting that good fight, but I think a lot of nursing homes are businesses, and I think a lot of businesses are struggling with getting the right person in the job. So, yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you coming out here to Inside Look, giving us a little insight on voices and what you do and for whom you do it. And I hope people that are listening to this podcast will reach out to you if they need your services.
Oh, please.
All right. Michelle Motta, thanks so much of Voices for coming out here. If you'd like to hear all of our Inside Look podcasts, you can do that wherever you get your podcast. You can also watch on the 14 News YouTube channel. Be sure to check out our companion podcast, What's the Trend, with Casey Mason and Aaron Weeks. That goes on Fridays. With Michelle Motta from Voices, I'm Jeff Lyons. Thanks for joining.